Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we are joined by special guest Paul Giron to talk about how AI is impacting interviews and recruiting.
Mhm.
Paul is a recruiter friend of mine that I've known for, golly, a decade. Uh, and he's been kind enough to come on and share his thoughts. So, Paul, let me just start you off with the softball question. How is AI impacting recruiting and interviewing in general?
Yeah, wow. So, I mean, it's a lot of organizations are making big investments. Everyone seems to be under the impression that if they're not leveraging AI, they're falling behind. Um, and I think we've seen certainly the introduction of internal tools which are helping recruiters and admin and the talent organization go through lots of uh, profiles very
Hmm.
rapidly in order to classify, right? And that's really sort of the goal. And really the question is it having a positive effect or not, right? So,
Right. Well, I know historically, and I haven't been in the recruiting pool for a
mhm,
while, but historically, like the joke was always you put every single buzzword on your resume because
mhm.
they're just going to do a search, and you need to have like if you don't put that specific word in there, you're not going to get found.
Yeah, and I think that's become we've become more efficient at searching for those buzzwords, right? That's really it. And I mean, I think um, uh, there are possible exceptions to this. I mean, because there are not just uh, sort of AI search tools to help you identify within a resume database or as you are searching online. For example, LinkedIn has some tools that are helping, uh, you know, with their structured data set very
Hmm.
efficiently be able to give you the candidates that you think you need, right? And at the end of the day, that sort of automation is, taking less responsibility from the recruiters to sort of know. And I think the end result, interestingly, is that the hiring managers have to do more work because they're asked to look at resumes
Hmm.
and say to see whether or not they want to talk to this candidate or not.
So
And
why does
so,
that? So that's interesting. So I would have thought you've got AIs now going to search through this
mhm,
pile of resumes instead of
right.
Control F, and
Mhm.
that will be better, right? In theory, that will produce a more fair, better pile of resumes to go through. So why would the hiring manager need to do more? Like, shouldn't isn't the
Okay.
recruiter going to say, okay, I did whatever it is I did, and here's the 10 resumes that I
Yeah.
think you should look at.
Right. Well, I think we should sort of uh, back up here, and I will
Yep,
answer that question first. But I think we should
you
just
will
sort of
answer it now.
widen this conversation a little bit
Yeah,
more. But um, if it hasn't made recruiters any better at their jobs,
that's
right?
a shame.
Well, yes, actually, it is a shame because I think the idea is that we can expect less from recruiters, and I think
That is hard. That I
that's a
expect
bad.
so little from them
Well,
already.
that's not. Listen, organizations are hiring for that, though.
Hmm.
You have to understand that there is there's a cost benefit ratio that organizations are making here, and I think there is an idea that you can have people administrate a process without understanding what the end goal is, which is that recruiting and talent acquisition is a support function for business functions, right? And
Mm-hmm.
specifically with technical recruiting, we're trying to support, we're trying to be a partner. We should be a partner with a technical organization so that they're doing the the minimal amount of work that is required for them to make a decision on, and this is the goal, who do we think will perform well in the future in this organization, right? And any technology that is not focused on helping us relieve pressure from the business, meaning engineering managers, and is not helping us identify people with a degree of accuracy that we can measure how people will perform on a team, it's a kind of a waste of money. It's kind of, we're doing the same things over and over again, except faster, right? That's what AI at the moment is bringing. Now, that's not all. There's a lot of very other interesting positive things, but
So,
in terms of recruiting itself, the recruiting platforms, that's what I'm seeing.
so from a recruiter standpoint, right now, AI is letting them churn the whip the resumes around faster, but it's not
Yes.
producing any better results.
Yes, I think you will. I think recruiters will have an easier time sourcing a stack of candidates to have a hiring manager look at that are closer to the specs that they're asking for. I think that's happening, but
Okay.
which is positive. That's
Right.
positive because you're sort of sorting the boulders from the pebbles, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you understand the metaphor that I'm trying for. But is that close enough, right? Does that mean they have to go through? There's 100 resumes they had to go through, which is obviously way too much. Now, is it 50, which is still too much, right? For them to get a candidate that they want to talk to, it should be way less than that. I still think that there's a human element that's missing, an expectation from a recruiting organization that we should have, that we don't, that's still missing. So, I mean, obviously, I'm advocate. I've been doing this a while. I think we should expect more of our recruiting organizations to know more about our business to help support that organization better, right? That still has to happen.
Well, in my I guess it's now 25 years of professional work, you are one of 3 recruiters that I think highly of. So,
Wow.
I,
Thank you very much. Wow.
I,
That's high praise for me.
yeah, well, I find recruiters to be just right up there with used car salesmen in
Yeah.
terms of quality. Unfortunately,
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot like that. And then internally within organizations, we're hiring, sort of recruiting coordinators to, which is fine. Actually, I think that's not in and of itself a problem, but the expectation and growth trajectory of a recruiting coordinator from an HR perspective is we can't expect too much of them, right? We can't, they're never going to understand the technology stack that that engineering uses. Well, why not? I mean, there's business; they can understand the business purpose for a technology stack easily, right? Why this technology over that technology? They don't need to understand what's under the hood. They need to know the business purpose, right? Why are you using, whatever data engineering tools or stack versus application development, whatever, that we can understand. And there's logic and there's some names that we vocabulary, but that's it. It's kind of a low bar, frankly. Just getting people to that point can help them do their jobs much better. Understanding the business reasons why tech is doing what they're doing, you'd have a much more efficient use of all of these AI tools that are happening today. It's like they're so close, but right now I'm afraid we're spinning our wheels. We're doing the wrong thing faster.
so if I could summarize it, you're saying AI is not in terms of it further on the recruiting side. AI is kind of hollowing out the recruiting, internal and external recruiting, because it is not teaching them anything and it's just letting them spin their wheels faster. And wise organizations should be spending their time right now teaching recruiters more about what it is that they're recruiting for so that they can add more human intelligence, because
Yes.
those are the kinds of things that aren't on a resume anyway.
Yes.
So the AI is not going to pick up on it because it's not
Correct.
there.
Correct.
And
And you need
so
to talk to them.
you
to
need to talk
understand.
to humans. And so
Yeah.
your fear, AI is helping you do the exact same thing faster with less intelligence.
Yes.
And if we use that time to train and teach recruiters to be better, it'll be a net positive. But if we don't, then recruiters are going to become even worse over time, which is already pretty lousy.
Right. So I picked on the talent organization. Now let's pick on the tech organization.
That's good, because that's where I was going to shift it.
Yeah. Um, perfect. Because I know that's your favorite.
Well, Isaac and I went to a tech conference last year, and there were 3 or 4 booths of companies. They're like, oh, we are using AI, or our tools are to see if people are using AI in their things. And it's all about letting you do remote interviews for less money and less effort, and weeding out people who are cheating with AI. And we were like, I know Isaac and I, we talked about it afterwards, like, you know what
Who
would
has
be
this
really
problem?
good is
Oh, go
instead
ahead.
of trying to interview more people and get more signal out of it, would just be to interview fewer people and put more effort into it.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, also too, like, they wanted to, like, me to, like, briefly describe what kind of person I would be hiring for, and then they would just kind of take it from there. Like, I gave them like a loose idea, and they would take, like, the entire rest of the conversations and, like, specking out whether or not they're a good candidate. It seemed like they wanted to take the burden of that off of us, and I'm like, well, I kind of want to know that myself. And who's got this problem where they're really trying to hire that fast, where they're like wanting you to dictate the best person for their organization when you don't even know anything about us.
Yes.
But they were apparently quite sought after. Um,
That is, I mean, used to be an expression which said no one ever got fired for hiring IBM, right? Even though that's the wrong, the wrong choice for 99% of software projects, and that's why,
That expression gave birth to the expression FUD, fear,
yeah,
uncertainty, and doubt.
that's it. So perfect, and we are paying our way through to help us feel better that we're making the right decisions while sort of not taking responsibility for the end result. And again, so again, to like, at the end of the day, we need to predict who's going to perform well on our teams, right? Do we even know who's performing well on our teams today? Right? That's another question.
That's a great question.
And how do we quantify that? Right? And so there is hope, because there are things that we can identify, both hard and soft skills, which you can write down, right? And you can say how important this is to you as an organization. Again, assuming you have a high performing organization already, which is a separate conversation about talent management. But you can, in a structured way, list, here are the technical skills you need. And we like people that are, play nice with others. They communicate well. When they make mistakes, here's how they behave, right? Those are things that you can assess for in a structured way, and that is repeatable, so that you can start to establish a baseline for your predictions on who's going to perform well. And then, if they do or they don't, that informs the model that you start with, and you take it from there. It's sort of like, constantly testing and growing this model, which is LLMs are all about that, right? you're constantly training this thing. And, there is, frankly, I mean, I think that's another idea for an AI tool, right? But in any case, that's besides the point. But conceptually, this is what I'm talking about, and we're not doing that. Like,
Right.
you can't get an engineering organization to say who are your high performers and why. So if you can't do that, how can you write it?
Organizations do it. The
Okay,
only
yeah.
ones that do it are the toxic ones, where you get the stack rank and you cut the bottom 10% every year.
Okay, yes, but that's the purpose of the stack rank,
Right.
right? What's your goal? The goal there is to cut the bottom 10% to always be saving money, to always XYZ. I'm not sure, I can't speak to everyone's motivations here.
I thought it was generally so that there was room to bring in new people to, try to make the new.
You think that? I think it's to save on who are you hiring? You're not hiring, ideally these sort of models, they don't try to hire senior people into the organization. They're trying to hire junior people into the organization that can
grow,
that can grow
in theory
at a market rate which is way below your average software developer in your organization. I mean, that's it. Right. Those ideas come from the Jack Welches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. The CEOs that are heroes, that they're not afraid to slash jobs, right, and keep costs down. That's where that mindset comes from. So what's the goal here that we're trying to accomplish is identifying talent to be able to define what it is that we're looking for, so that we can put it in some sort of structured way, and either don't use any AI and then just like use analog questions, or use AI in that way. But what the person you met at the tech fair is not going to tell you is that we need you to do all the work to be able to make this tool successful. And if you can't, if you give us a job description, how many job descriptions have you seen that you think are actually usable to enter into some automated system that's going to find you the right candidate? 5 years of Java,
10 years of something that hasn't existed for 10 years.
Right, exactly.
They're just prerequisites.
They're just prerequisites. That's what we're feeding our AI models now. That's what we're using. And I think it's the same problem, just getting faster and more efficient at I think maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll expose the issue or not. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we're going to learn from it.
Well, I want to pick up on a tangent we had, because I'm now super fascinated. Years ago, the second time we worked together at Guaranteed Rate, we did a lot of interviewing, and one thing, and Guaranteed Rate was a high turnover organization, and one thing that we never did was actually assess the performance of the people we hired. Right, I think we would interview maybe 10 or 15 people for everyone that we hired, but we never would go back. And obviously, you don't know how the people that you said no to would have worked out because you didn't hire them. But we never went back and looked at how the people that we did hire turned out, so that we could then tune our interviewing process. Because we spent, Guaranteed Rate spent a lot of money, because they spent a lot of developer time doing interviews, which is great. Also, I highly recommend, if you can, as a developer, get in on doing more interviews. Yeah, but and you mentioned something about, if you had a tool, if the internal recruiters were using some kind of tools to assess how people were performing internally to the company, that could provide a lot of insight into what kind of people you need to hire or not want to hire, if you need to change things outside of the company. And I want to pick up on that thread because that was super interesting, even though it's totally off topic.
Yeah.
So
But
what
yeah,
would
it
that
is interesting. Go ahead.
what would that look like if you were running an organization, right? If
Yeah.
you were head of recruiting,
Yep.
how would you go? Because I would say that in most of my time, many managers don't actually know who their high performers or gold pickers are,
Yep.
and they certainly
And they
wouldn't
usually
want
fire them.
which
The high performers get fired, right?
Yes.
Often. I
'Cause
mean,
they're
that happens
annoying.
a lot. Yeah, because they're annoying.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they don't know who their high performers are. They don't know who's not performing.
Yep.
And even if they do know, they usually don't want to admit it because either they like the people and so it's a personal thing, or
Yeah.
they fear it reflects badly on them that they haven't fired this person before, and therefore now you can't admit that they're bad. And so if you, Paul, were coming in and saying, hey, I want to set up this thing so we can start figuring out who works well so that I can hire people who will work well.
Yes.
How would you go about that?
Yeah. So, there are structural problems today within organizations just because it's the way we've done business forever, which is HR is their goal is about risk mitigation, right? I mean, that's their job is to make sure we don't get sued. Take it back to the 50s, not the sort of the people first ethos that we think of today that is our talent organizations. But, way back when human resources was a function that was created, the real reason there was to make sure that the company didn't get sued and you control the cost of employees, right? And some explicitly were about really like managing the rabble, right? From management, for management, right? They're doing all of the dirty work for them, which is the firing part and like threatening with them with being fired, et cetera. But, fast forward today, we have much, sort of more enlightened organizations, talented organizations, and we're understanding that, that we can't treat people that way. But HR still has a mandate of making sure we are firing the underperformers, and which is, fine. I'm not saying we should not, but their mandate is about risk mitigation, period, right? Part of that risk mitigation is about confidentiality of why we do, why the organization does what it does, and specifically why we fire people, right? That creates legal liability if we divulge outside of this, trust tree of why we fired who we fired. So today, the only people that know that are, the hiring manager and your HR business partner. Recruiting's not included in that loop, right? And there are reasons, right, for that. I'm not saying they're wrong, but there are reasons. But it is, can you, expand that little trust tree to your recruiting organization so that they can learn and have that learning inform the model for who it is that they're looking for, right? I mean, it's a simple idea, but very hard to get organizations to change to make that happen. I can
see that. I think up the wazoo, especially if if HR is sweeping something under the rug.
Yes,
they definitely don't want to tell,
especially when that happens, right?
But
there's ways around that. You can anonymize this data too, right? I mean, if you really cared about that, right?
But at a small company, right? If if there were
harder.
If there are 50 people and you only fired 3 of them this year, no matter how anonymized it is, which 3 are which.
That's true, but still, that if there's 50 people, there's probably 3 people in HR. One is doing recruiting, right, and payroll. You know what I mean? So it's usually in those organizations they're doing double duty. I mean, I think probably not payroll, but like sort of talent management stuff, HR business partner and recruiting, right? That's usually what they're doing. So that in that case, it should work. But as you scale, you need that information needs to inform who it is you're looking for. Otherwise, otherwise we can never actually improve our organizations. I'm not even talking about forget about hiring the right people, because ultimately the reason why we're hiring is also to improve our organizations, to get better. But if we're
also
not
just expansion.
Okay,
Ideally,
yeah. Okay, so it depends how you measure better, right?
Right.
How do you measure better? If that's bigger, okay,
all depends.
that's a reason, right? I mean, yeah, it definitely all depends, and that's why there's no silver bullet here. And I think the idea that AI has changed the recruiting landscape is, I just think it's not true yet. Right? I mean, yeah, it certainly has, but functionally, at the end of the day, what results are we getting? They're going to be the same results, because structurally, how we're doing business is not, it's not wrong, but it is not effective. It's not efficient. It's not. We could do so much better if we just sort of, if we wanted to. That's
right. The attitude of, if we use AI, we can put less effort into it, is the wrong attitude. More effort.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. We can save money because we don't have to hire an extra recruiting coordinator. Also, that's AI is great at scheduling interviews, right? Actually, that's something it does well. It's scheduling. It's looking at people's calendars and finding. Can you call that AI? No. But it's a part of the platforms that that are being sold to people, organizations, and frankly, yeah, we should talk about what we call AI to begin with.
Not today. We're way off.
Not today, because we're way off. But I am curious to know from you guys, what do you think about Copilot, right? As an example, let's start there. Like, is Copilot, it has not Copilot. What is GitHub's
Copilot?
Copilot. Okay. It has, the model is, I'm assuming, based upon the largest code repository in the world. That's my assumption. I don't know that for a fact, but yeah, if they've built their models on the code quality and of their entire repository, it's probably the best one. How are you guys responding to Copilot? Is it something that you can really just like copy paste? No.
I'm working in a stack on a piece of software that has evolved continuously for 18 years. And so I turned off Copilot because there are like 4 major styles in this code base, and it gets very confused. And and so in this case, for my daily work, Copilot is not helpful yet, because my code base has so many different styles in it that I have to double check it very thoroughly whenever it recommends something. And then by that point, it hasn't saved me any time.
Okay. So, and I think, frankly, as complex as coding is, it is nowhere near as complex as a human being, right? So it's struggling with figuring out, what it is you're trying to accomplish, when it's relatively straightforward, when you are, creating a function or an algorithm, right? It's relatively straightforward. You're saying what you want to do, right? And still, the GitHub, the largest, having access to the largest code base in the world to build their model, it's still getting confused. What expectation do we have? I mean, we're selling vaporware again. We're selling a dream. Okay.
I have a
That's
slight
we're selling a
pushback,
dream.
I agree that code can be imperfect, but
Yeah.
my experience, not necessarily using Copilot, but ChatGPT,
Okay.
so just an LLM for coding,
Hmm.
it can be quite effective at like with generating dummy data, for example. If you want
Yes.
to just have an entire
Sure.
model real fast,
Yeah.
and that will save me 30 minutes of just mocking out data.
Right.
Or if you need a regex for particular that matches a particular thing and you don't want to think too hard about it, just say write me the
Yes.
regex for this. It does a really
Yes.
great job at that.
Hmm.
And if your code is well structured, it can generate unit tests for it pretty effectively as well. Sometimes there's a couple things you have to tweak. You're right, you have to guide it. It's not perfect every time.
Yes.
So it needs human intervention.
You
But it
and your
still
well-structured
saved me a lot
code.
of time. So I think it's more
And
about
because
how
you're using it
the
the right
tool.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you, the user, are using it the right way.
yeah. I'm
Because of
curating
your
the
experience.
responses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're curating the responses, and it is very powerful. I think every organization should be building out, saying like, I value people that never quit. Okay, ChatGPT, give me 10 behavioral questions that I can put as a part of my structured interview questions
Right.
that assesses for people who never quit. Right.
God, I don't want to work with people who never quit. They hammer the wrong idea into the ground.
Right.
But you can still
Okay,
use this
yeah.
concept, this prompt, for example. Like you can even query your own company and say, what are the best things you like about working here? And then you
Yeah.
can get that kind of those responses and funnel that back in to
See,
your prompts.
these are great ways of using.
Yes.
Listen, Google has done an amazing job in the past. Before their, who knows, maybe it was concurrent with their AI building, but this is probably now 15 years ago when they started to build structured interviewing and understanding that all of us think that we're really good at hiring and predicting who will do well, but frankly, we're filled with our own biases, right?
Mhm.
And so let's take that out and make structured interviewing and ways of, frankly, being able to come out with repeatable processes that we can measure over time. They've done this very well. Every organization can do the same, and frankly, ChatGPT has just made it possible for everyone, every talent organization, to make this easy once they figure out what they're looking for.
That's great. Should we wrap it up? Isaac, do you have more questions or?
I think we had a good
Isaac, we never talked, man. Jeffrey was just
I bogarted the
hogging the
conversation.
time. He did, but that's because we know each other. But maybe next time we'll feel more comfortable cutting Jeffrey out of the conversation.
I will shut up for next time. Paul, if people want to get in touch or learn more about you, where should they look for you?
Yeah, you can find me, on LinkedIn, Paul, / Paul PPGIRON, and I'm at Paul at GTech Recruitment.com. That's my email address if you want to contact me. Maybe can we put it up in the show notes or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send that to you and maybe we'll put it up in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Paul.
My pleasure.
I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.